Micah stood with his hands raised. No weapon, no threat, just a broken pencil in his palm. The cop had his hand on his holster, shouting orders no one could follow. All Micah did was ask for a new test paper, the one everyone else got. The teacher said, "You people always want special treatment." Then came the sound that silenced the room, and someone hit record. Before we deep dive into this interesting story, subscribe to our channel, and tell us where are you watching from. Share in the comments below. The first day of senior year at Ashgrove High smelled like polished linoleum, printer ink, and too much cologne. It was the kind of Tuesday that promised new beginnings for most students. But for Micah Turner, it was just another stage, with new eyes watching. He tightened his grip on the straps of his worn-out backpack. As he scanned the long white hallways, the hum of fluorescent lights buzzing overhead.
Micah was used to being underestimated. He was used to the double takes when he raised his hand, the suspicious looks when he scored top marks, the way counselors steered him towards sports instead of STEM. But this year he had something to prove. AP Chemistry was his battlefield, and he came prepared.
Room 24. Mr. Halston. Micah stepped into the classroom, his sneakers squeaking against the floor. Students had already begun clustering at the lab benches, laughing, unwrapping notebooks, exchanging summer gossip. The teacher stood at the front of the room, arranging test tubes, with the ease of someone who'd done it for decades. He was in his late 50s, white, with a buzzed haircut and wire-framed glasses. Something about his presence made the room quieter. Mr. Halston smiled warmly at a tall white boy who clapped him on the back and said, "Missed you this summer, coach." Micah walked past the teacher's desk, made eye contact, and gave a respectful nod. No smile was returned, just a fleeting glance, one that said, "What are you doing here?" Micah picked a seat in the second row. Not in the back, not up front. Just enough to be seen without being a target. He unpacked his spiral notebook, pencil, calculator. His hands moved with practiced precision, the same way they did when he fixed old watches for neighbors in his free time. More students trickled in, mostly white, some Asian, two Latinas he recognized from debate club. He scanned the room. He was the only black student in the class. Again, the bell rang. Mr. Halston clapped his hands. "Welcome, folks, to AP Chemistry. If you're here, you already know this isn't your average science class. I'll expect focus, integrity, and discipline. If that's too much, there's the door." Laughter echoed. Light. Friendly. Except none of it came from Micah. "Let's do introductions," the teacher continued. "Name, why you took this class, and what you want out of it." The students went around. Some said they wanted to be doctors, chemists, engineers. Others just wanted AP credits. When it came to Micah, he stood tall. "Micah Turner," he said clearly. "I'm aiming for MIT, and I'm here because chemistry fascinates me. I want to research sustainable fuel sources." A pause. Mr. Halston blinked once, then moved on like he hadn't heard. Micah sat down, pulse steady. He'd seen this before, but every time it happened, it chipped away at something he tried so hard to protect. The class moved into the syllabus. The teacher's tone shifted depending on who asked a question, warm to some, cold to others. When Micah raised his hand about the lab safety protocol, Mr. Halston stared at him a second too long. "Read the packet, Mr. Turner. It's all there." Some students smirked. One nudged the boy next to him. Micah glanced at the packet. The answer wasn't in it. Lunch came. He sat with his usual crew, Jamari, Eliza, and Theo. They cracked jokes and shared fries, but Micah was distant. "You good?" Jamari asked. "First day. First strike," Micah muttered. "Already?" Eliza leaned in. Micah nodded. "Halston, man barely looked at me. Gave me attitude for asking a legit question." Theo raised an eyebrow. "Old dude with the military haircut. Yeah, he had my brother 2 years ago. Said something about urban kids not being cut out for lab work." The table went quiet. Micah's jaw tightened. "I'm not letting him push me out." They nodded. But the silence held something else. A mix of anger, fear, and resignation. Back in class, they started a short diagnostic quiz. Micah breezed through it. Stoichiometry, atomic structures, gas laws. It was the stuff he'd studied all summer. He handed it in early, double-checked. Mr. Halston took the paper without a glance. Didn't even say thank you. But when a white girl named Brittany handed hers in 2 minutes later, he smiled and said, "Eager, aren't we?" Micah sat back down. His fists clenched beneath the table. The last 20 minutes were a review video. As the lights dimmed, Micah noticed Mr. Halston staring at him from his desk. Not just glancing. Staring. As if trying to decode something. Micah didn't break eye contact. He wouldn't give that man the satisfaction. When the bell rang, students packed up quickly. The noise of backpacks zipping, chairs scraping, and doors swinging open filled the room. But as Micah headed toward the door, a voice cut through the chaos. "Mr. Turner." A word. Micah paused. The room empty. He turned back. Mr. Halston was organizing lab materials, but his posture was relaxed. Too relaxed. Calculated. Micah approached, standing upright. "Yes, sir." The teacher didn't look at him right away. Instead, he wiped a beaker, placed it carefully on the drying rack, then finally met his eyes. "You're confident," he said, almost like it was an accusation. Micah didn't blink. "I prepare. Confidence follows." A twitch in Halston's cheek. "We'll see if that holds. This class is challenging, and we hold students to the highest standards. Some find that difficult." Micah tilted his head. "I expect to be held to the same standards as everyone else." Mr. Halston smiled, but it wasn't friendly. It was tight, calculated, like he was letting Micah know exactly how the year would go. "Oh, don't worry," he said slowly. "I'll be watching you." Micah left the classroom, but the chill in his spine didn't fade. As he walked down the hallway, he passed a bulletin board. Something new had been pinned up. AP Chemistry Midterm Committee. Volunteer graders needed. And right under Mr. Halston's name, in bold black ink, was another. Selected peer reviewer, Tyler McAllister. Micah froze. Tyler was the same student who once called him a racial slur during gym. The same one Halston smiled at. Micah felt his stomach drop. Something was already in motion. It started with the lab assignments. Each Monday, Mr. Halston paired students for chemistry experiments. Micah noticed the pattern quickly. The same students, those Halston smiled at, joked with, gave subtle nods to, always ended up together. Strong pairings, the promising ones. Micah, despite having the highest quiz scores for 3 weeks straight, kept getting paired with students who clearly didn't care. One week, he was matched with Jake, who texted the entire period. Another with Marcy, who didn't even bring goggles. Micah carried each lab, did the write-up solo, and turned them in under both names. When he asked about his scores, Halston barely looked up. "You're doing adequate," he said one afternoon. "Though I find it hard to believe you're not getting help." Micah stared at him. "I'm doing the work myself." Halston shrugged. "You're a busy kid. Jobs, family, sometimes it's tempting to cut corners." Micah left the room boiling. He'd spent 3 nights that week practicing titrations. Alone. He even filmed one to double-check his accuracy. But none of that mattered. Soon, the whispering started. Subtle at first. "Micah gets all A's? Really?" Someone muttered in the hallway. "I heard his sister helps him. Isn't she in college?"
By October, it escalated. During a group project, Brittany said, loud enough for others to hear, "We should all work together, not let someone just copy again."
Micah froze. "Excuse me?" "I'm just saying," she said, not looking up. "It needs to be fair." The teacher didn't correct her. Micah finished the assignment by himself. He stopped raising his hand, not because he didn't know the answers, but because every time he spoke, someone rolled their eyes, or scribbled something behind their binder. One day, after correctly solving an extra credit problem on the board, he returned to find the word cheater faintly etched into his notebook. He erased it, silently. At home, he told no one. His parents had enough to worry about. Bills. His little brother's asthma. His mom picking up double shifts at the hospital. His dad, once a mechanical engineer in another life, now fixing air conditioners. They were proud of him. He couldn't risk changing that look in their eyes. One night he sat across from his sister Nadia, home from college for fall break. "You're quiet," she said. "Just school stuff." She studied him. "Halston still breathing down your neck?" Micah nodded. "Now students are too. It's like they're waiting for me to mess up, so they can say I didn't earn anything." Nadia reached for his hand. "You did earn it. You always do. But this," she paused. "This ain't about effort. It's about their comfort." He looked up. "What do you mean?" "Your excellence makes them uncomfortable, Micah. They expect you to exist quietly. Background. But you shine too loud." Micah swallowed hard. The next day, a substitute teacher handed back graded reports. Micah's had a red circle. Plagiarism suspected. He marched to Halston's desk the moment he returned. This isn't right. Halston didn't flinch. The phrasing in your hypothesis was nearly identical to a sample in last year's binder. Micah's heart pounded. I've never seen that binder. Halston stared at him. Then it's quite the coincidence. A week later, after hours of back and forth and an appeal to the assistant principal, Micah was cleared. The grade was reinstated. But the stain lingered. Whispers grew louder. Trust eroded. Then came the midterm schedule. Posted outside room, students crowded around, pointing at time slots. Each had their name next to a test version. A, B, or C. Micah found his. Micah Turner, version D. He blinked. No one else had a version D. He stepped back, scanning the list again. Confirmed. His chest tightened. A quiet voice behind him. Tyler McAllister. Guess you got the special one, huh? He said with a smirk. Hope you studied real hard. Micah's eyes flicked toward the classroom door, where Mr. Halston stood, arms crossed, already watching. Micah sat in his seat, staring at the manila envelope, labeled version D. It had been placed upside down on his desk, deliberately. The paper was heavier than the ones around him, slightly thicker, and the handwriting on it wasn't typed like the others. It was scrawled in a sharp, quick cursive that he immediately recognized. Mr. Halston. All around him, students eagerly flipped open their packets, versions A, B, and C. Brittany had version A. Tyler, of course, had version B. Micah had checked every name on the seating chart earlier that morning. No one else had a version D. No one. He glanced to his left. 2 students were already on question 2. He looked right. Someone was using a highlighter to underline key terms. Normal tests. Normal students. Micah's fingers hovered over the envelope. He glanced up. Mr. Halston was watching him. From the back of the room, arms folded, expression unreadable, but behind his eyes, Micah could see it. A test. Not just on paper, but of worth, of nerve, of identity. He opened the envelope, and his stomach dropped. The first sentence was nothing they had covered in class. It referenced quantum yield and activation entropy. 2 concepts he had only heard mentioned in passing, while flipping through his sister Nadia's college chemistry textbook over the summer. It wasn't high school material. It wasn't even AP material. Micah turned the page. The next question was a multi-step derivation involving molecular orbital theory and required calculus, which they weren't even supposed to need in this class. He looked around. Other students were working calmly, brows furrowed in concentration, but not confusion. Not like him. Micah's heart began to race. He turned the next page, hoping maybe that first one was a fluke. But it got worse. Each question was more obscure, more complex. Organic chemistry, physical chemistry, lab simulations. They'd never done. Equations without clear values. Theory-heavy essays, asking for his philosophy on molecular behavior. On page 4 there was a prompt that made his throat tighten. Do you believe your performance is indicative of personal aptitude? Or the result of privileged academic support? Defend your answer with reference to empirical achievement.
What?
Micah's eyes narrowed. This wasn't just a test, it was a message. He flipped back to the cover. In the bottom corner, version D, issued by instructor. Micah felt his chest constrict. His fingers curled into a fist beneath the desk. It took every ounce of self-control not to crumple the packet right there. He looked up again. Mr. Halston was still watching. And then, the smallest twitch at the corner of the teacher's mouth. A smile. A knowing, calculated smile. Micah's hands trembled slightly. Not from fear, from fury. He had studied for this test all month. He had gone through every AP review book, watched every lecture, done more prep than anyone in the class. And yet here he was, given a test that had nothing to do with what he'd been taught. He flipped to the last page. The final question was a full lab design. But not just any lab. It asked for a breakdown of a synthetic fuel cell experiment, using reagents that weren't even available in the school's inventory. The kind of thing MIT freshmen might be challenged with. Micah looked at the clock. 63 minutes left. He had wasted 12 minutes already. He could give up. Walk out. Report it. But he knew how that would go. It would be his word against Halston's. He'd be called disruptive, maybe dishonest, a sore loser. So he did what he always did. He pushed through. Micah flipped to the first page and started writing. He didn't have all the answers. Some he guessed. Others he reasoned through from memory or logic. His handwriting was tighter than usual. Clipped. Every sentence was a small battle against rage. Halfway through the test, Halston strolled up the aisle. Micah kept his eyes on the paper. Click, click. The teacher's shoes stopped behind him. Micah could feel his presence close, too close. Then came the voice, low and cold. Trouble, Mr. Turner? Micah didn't look up. No, sir. I assumed someone of your caliber would finish early. Micah clenched his jaw. This exam isn't consistent with our coursework. There was a pause. Then Halston leaned in just enough for only Micah to hear. You said you were smart. Prove it. And with that, he walked away. Micah stared down at the final 2 pages. His pencil hovered, hesitated. He scribbled a paragraph about thermal efficiency, scratched it out, and wrote another. It was rushed, and he hated that. But there was no time for perfection now. Then he noticed something else. In Halston's textbook, open on the teacher's desk, a cell phone had been slipped into the crease. The camera lens peeked out, facing directly at Micah's desk. The red recording light was blinking. He was being filmed. Micah's pulse spiked. Was Halston recording him taking the test? For what? To use as evidence later? To frame him for cheating? To monitor how he reacted under pressure? Micah swallowed hard. This wasn't just racism. It was entrapment. He dropped his pencil for a moment, took a long, deep breath, and looked around. Everyone else was oblivious. Focused. Unbothered. Just another midterm. He finished what he could. When the bell rang, students groaned and stretched. Some joked about how easy the multiple-choice section had been. Others compared their answers out loud. Micah sat still. He hadn't had a multiple-choice section. He packed slowly, hand trembling as he placed the exam in the envelope, and walked to the front. Halston took it wordlessly. But as Micah turned to go, Halston spoke once more. You'll get your results next week. Let's hope your confidence was warranted. Micah didn't respond. He stepped out into the hall, where Jamari was waiting. You good? He asked. Micah exhaled. I got version D. Jamari squinted. What the hell is version D? Micah looked him dead in the eyes. A test that didn't match anything we learned. College level. Stuff even Nadia hasn't seen. Jamari's face hardened. He did that on purpose. Yeah. Micah nodded. And he recorded the whole thing. His phone was pointed at my desk. You serious? Micah nodded again. Slower this time. Jamari clenched his jaw. That's messed up. They walked in silence for a few beats. Then Micah whispered. I think he's setting something up. Like he's building a case. Trying to catch me in something that ain't there. Jamari stopped walking. What are you gonna do? Micah's eyes narrowed. I'm gonna document everything. Every word. Every glance. If he wants a case, I'll have my own. The next morning, Micah arrived early to school. Too early. The halls were nearly empty. The classroom doors still locked. He walked to room and taped to the door, freshly printed, was a list of midterm score discrepancies. His name was at the top. Turner, Amirdibrid.
Pending review. Academic integrity, under evaluation.
Micah stepped back, staring at the paper in disbelief. He hadn't even gotten his grade yet, but somehow he was already under investigation. Micah stood in front of the paper taped to the door of room 2. Turner M. Read pending review academic integrity under evaluation. The font was bold. Black ink. No explanation. He stared at it for a long time. His breath shallow. Fists clenched at his sides. Students passed behind him, some slowing down to glance at the list. A few whispered. One laughed. Guess genius boy wasn't so genius after all. He turned his head. It was Tyler. Micah didn't respond. He just kept staring at the paper. Halston's plan was moving faster than he thought. That afternoon, Halston handed back the rest of the class's tests. Brittany beamed. Tyler fist bumped someone after seeing his score. Micah's desk remained empty. You'll be notified, Halston said flatly, when Micah approached. By lunch, rumors had spread. Some said he plagiarized the test. Others claimed he had a cheat sheet. Someone even said Halston had video evidence. Micah sat at the far end of the cafeteria, head down. Jamari and Eliza flanked him, protective. You need to talk to the principal, Eliza said. I did, Micah replied. She said it's under review, that I should be patient. Patient while they destroy your rep? Jamari snapped. Hell no. Micah stayed silent. He didn't want to escalate. Not yet. But the fuse was already lit. That Friday, something snapped. It was 5th period. Chemistry lab day. Halston was absent. A substitute handed out instructions and left the students to their stations. Micah got paired, again with Tyler. Tyler hadn't even bothered to put on his goggles. He leaned back on the stool, spinning a glass rod in his fingers. "Still waiting to find that cheat code, huh?" he said without looking up. Micah ignored him. "You know," Tyler continued, "I used to think you were smart. Turns out you're just another scholarship leech pretending to be better than you are." Micah's jaw tightened. He continued setting up the beakers. He measured carefully, silently, resisting the heat crawling up his spine. Tyler laughed. "What? No comeback? Guess you're only good with stolen answers." Micah turned slowly. "I didn't cheat." "Sure you didn't." Tyler smirked. "You people always got an excuse." Micah froze. A glass stirrer cracked in his hand. He dropped it immediately. Tyler stood up, towering half an inch taller. "Look at you, trying to act calm. Bet you snap the minute someone pushes too hard." Micah turned back to the station. "You're not worth it," Tyler scoffed. "That's right. Walk away." But as Micah stepped toward the sink, Tyler picked up the lab manual and hurled it. The binder hit Micah in the back. Hard. Micah spun around. "What the hell is your problem?" The entire class went silent. Just in time for the substitute to walk in. She saw Micah standing, fists tight, face red. Tyler, meanwhile, looked innocent, shrugged. "He got mad and started yelling," Tyler said quickly. "I was just helping." The sub's eyes narrowed. "Micah, go to the office."
What?
He threw. Now, Micah stood there stunned, then walked out without another word. The suspension came down fast. 3 days. Disruptive behavior. Threatening a peer. No mention of Tyler. No witness statements taken. No review. Micah's parents were called in. They sat stiffly in the small gray conference room. His mother's hands gripped her purse strap. His father's eyes stayed on the table. The assistant principal repeated the same vague statement. Micah sat between his parents, seething. "I didn't touch him," he said. "He threw a book at me. No one asked the other students. No one checked anything." "I understand your frustration," the AP said. "But we have to maintain a safe environment for all students." "My son was the one being threatened," his mother finally said. The AP's voice dropped. "We don't have time to play the blame game." That night, Micah sat on the edge of his bed, still in his hoodie, backpack untouched. His phone buzzed. A text from Eliza. "I got video. Sending now." Micah opened it. The footage, shot from beneath a lab table, clearly showed Tyler throwing the book. And Micah, standing there, arms at his side. He forwarded it to his mom. Within an hour she had called the school board. A hearing was scheduled. Micah wore a button-up and tie. His parents flanked him in the boardroom. Across the table, Principal Valdez, Assistant Principal Brooks and Halston. They watched the video in silence. When it ended, Valdez leaned back slowly. "Well, that complicates things." Brooks looked uncomfortable. "It's not conclusive." "Not conclusive?" Micah's mom said. "It shows everything." Halston cleared his throat. "We have a responsibility to ensure order in the classroom, regardless of who escalated it." Micah's dad finally spoke. "You're punishing my son for existing in that room." A long pause. Then Principal Valdez said 5 words. "We don't want your kind." Silence fell like a hammer. Micah's mom's breath caught. His father stood up slowly. Micah sat frozen. He wasn't even sure what part stung more, that they said it, or that no one in the room looked surprised. As they left the boardroom, the secretary passed Micah a sealed envelope. He opened it in the parking lot. Inside, a letter. Effective immediately, Micah Turner is being recommended for academic reassignment due to ongoing disruption to school integrity standards. In the corner, an unfamiliar signature, District Superintendent, whom Micah had never even met. Something bigger was happening, and someone higher up wanted him gone. Micah didn't speak on the drive home. The suspension, the hearing, the superintendent's signature, every second of it echoed in his mind like a slow, steady drum. His father drove in silence, hands tight on the wheel. His mother sat beside him, purse clutched in her lap, lips pressed together. No one said a word until they pulled into the driveway. The porch light flicked on automatically as they stepped inside. Nadia sat on the couch, laptop open, eyebrows rising as soon as she saw their faces. "What happened?" Micah dropped his bag by the door. "They're trying to reassign me. District level." Nadia stood. "On what grounds?" "They said I was a disruption." Because Tyler threw a book at you. Micah nodded. Nadia's mouth dropped open. This is insane. Micah's father cleared his throat. Enough. We'll handle this as a family. Quietly. Quietly. Nadia scoffed. Dad, they're trying to erase him. Mr. Turner walked into the kitchen, poured a glass of water, and leaned against the counter. You think I don't know what this is? He said, voice low. I've been black in corporate America. I've had my ideas stolen in meetings, then called articulate, like it's praise. I've watched promotions pass me by for people who barely knew what they were doing. But I kept my head down, because making it out was more important than making noise. Micah looked at him. But that didn't change anything. No, his father admitted, but it kept food on the table. Nadia stepped forward. This isn't about food, it's about dignity. He didn't respond. That night, the silence in the house was thick. Micah sat on his bed, staring at the ceiling. He didn't want to talk. He didn't want to cry. He wanted to disappear. He heard a knock. Nadia stepped in, laptop in hand. I'm posting it, she said. Micah sat up. Posting what? Your story. The video. Everything. Micah's eyes widened. No. If the district sees, they already made their move. She interrupted. Now it's our turn. Before he could argue, she clicked post. The caption was simple. My little brother is being pushed out of school for being black and brilliant. Here's the truth. Attached was the video, the test screenshots, the audio clip of Halston whispering, you said you were smart. Prove it. Within an hour, it had 1,000. By midnight, it was. Micah couldn't sleep. His phone buzzed nonstop. Comments poured in. This is disgusting. Fire that teacher. I had the same experience in my AP class. Micah, you are not alone. By morning it was trending. Nadia's post had made it to TikTok, Twitter, Facebook groups for educators and civil rights advocates. Micah opened his messages to find dozens of interview requests, activists, podcasts, local bloggers. He rubbed his eyes. Then his phone rang. Unknown number. He answered. Is this Micah Turner? The voice said. Yes. This is Kara Simmons from Channel 9 News. I'd like to talk to you about what's happening at Ashgrove High. Micah froze. She continued. We'd like to run your story tonight, on the 6 o'clock broadcast. Micah glanced at the hallway. His parents were still asleep. He whispered, I need to call you back. But his mind was racing. This was no longer just a school fight. This was about to go national. By the time the 6 o'clock news aired, Micah's life was no longer his own. His face was on every screen in the city. Phones, tablets, TVs mounted in living rooms and waiting rooms, and fast food joints. The news segment was slickly edited and cleanly delivered, but the impact was anything but soft. Kara Simmons stood outside Ashgrove High in a navy blazer, her tone sharp with quiet anger. This is the face of a student who's been silenced. She began. The piece cut between footage from Nadia's now viral post, the classroom video, screenshots of Micah's altered test, the audio of Halston's venomous whisper, and a brief clip of Micah's parents sitting on their porch, stunned but composed. You said you were smart. Prove it. That line echoed across households nationwide. By 7 had already been reposted by 3 national education blogs and 2 civil rights Twitter accounts, with millions of followers. By midnight, the story had made it to Reddit's front page, under the headline, AP student targeted with racist sabotage. School doubles down. Within 24 hours, the fire had caught. Justice for Micah trended across all major platforms. Over 100,000 people signed a petition demanding Mr. Halston's immediate termination. Prominent black educators and activists amplified Nadia's post. TikTok creators began stitching the audio with reactions, some crying, others furious. And for a moment, it felt like justice might be possible. The next morning, the Turner household was flooded with messages. The landline rang off the hook. Emails poured in from across the country. Hi, my name is Ava. I had a similar experience in AP Calculus. Tell Micah he's not alone. My son is in 10th grade and your courage gave him hope. We'd like to offer a full scholarship if he's forced out. The family's living room became a makeshift war room. Nadia managed the social media flood. Micah's mother coordinated legal consultations with civil rights attorneys, some who had handled national cases. His father remained mostly quiet but present, reading every article, every message, every legal threat. Micah tried to stay grounded, but it was like standing in a storm. He was grateful, humbled, but also overwhelmed. With every message that praised him, there was another that clawed at his dignity. It started subtly, comments under the original post. This kid's faking it for clout. Doesn't look like racism to me. Just another lazy student crying when he fails. The real racism is giving him a platform. Then came the trolls. They unearthed an old YouTube account. Micah had created in 8th grade to post video game clips. Harmless stuff, Minecraft walkthroughs, awkward voiceovers. But they clipped them, distorted the audio, and turned them into memes. One video surfaced where 13-year-old Micah had mispronounced a chemistry term in a science fair presentation. The trolls latched onto it like bloodhounds. MIT dreams? This kid doesn't even know how to pronounce stoichiometry. Nadia tried to delete, flag, report, but it was like playing whack-a-mole. New accounts sprang up faster than they could respond. Micah began receiving direct messages with grotesque edits of his face, superimposed on mugshots. Others sent racial slurs. A few accused him of setting up the entire thing for attention. And then, the threats started. It was Saturday night. Micah was curled up in the corner of the couch, earbuds in, watching a documentary just to drown out the noise. Nadia rushed in, her face pale. Micah, they doxed us. He pulled out an earbud. What? Our address. On 4chan. Twitter. Facebook comments. Someone posted your class schedule. My dorm address. Even a photo of our house from Google Maps. Micah sat up straight. Nadia turned her phone to him. There it was. His school ID, edited with red target crosshairs. Someone had dug into school records. It wasn't just harassment now. It was dangerous. Seconds later, his mother came storming out of her room in a bathrobe, phone to her ear. Yes, this is urgent. I have 2 children at home, and our personal information has been released online. She hung up. Police are sending someone by. Micah's father locked all the windows, double-checked the back door, and pulled the blinds so tight they crumpled. The house felt like it was holding its breath. The police came 2 hours later. A young officer in his mid-20s took down the details and shrugged. There's not much we can do about internet stuff, he said, but we'll have extra patrol cars swing by. Try to stay off social media. Micah's mom bristled. My son is being threatened, and your advice is to stay offline? We don't want to escalate. Escalation already happened, Nadia snapped. That night, no one slept. They took turns staying up. Micah sat on the floor by the front door with a baseball bat resting across his knees. His father stayed by the back window with a flashlight. Nadia watched the cameras on her phone. At 2:12 a.m., the floodlights triggered. Micah froze. He moved to the window but saw nothing. By morning, everything looked normal. Until they stepped outside. His mother screamed. Both sides of her car had deep, jagged key scratches. Someone had written the word liar across the passenger side door. And on the porch, lying flat like it had been placed there carefully. A single sheet of paper, burned at the edges, slightly curled from the heat. It was handwritten, large black marker, transfer or else. The police came again. This time they took photos. Said they'd file it as criminal mischief. That's all? Nadia asked. Micah picked up the note with gloved hands. Something about it stuck in his throat. The way the letters curved. The spacing. The slanted lines. He turned to Nadia, holding it up. This handwriting, it's familiar. She blinked. What do you mean? He ran upstairs and pulled out his folder, the one he'd kept with copies of all his graded work. From the very back, he pulled out the version D exam envelope. He held the 2 side by side. Same marker. Same pressure. Same R formation. It wasn't a guess. It was the same handwriting. Micah stared at the note, stomach tightening, his breathing shallow, mind racing. It hadn't come from some faceless troll. It hadn't come from a random angry parent. It had come from someone inside the school, and he knew exactly who. But he also knew no one would believe him without proof. Micah had seen enough movies to know what it looked like when someone was being framed. He just never thought it would happen to him. The burned note, the threats, the media heat, the silence from the school district, and now, the handwriting. That night, sitting at the dining table, under dim light, Micah held the burned threat and the version D envelope side by side. Same R's, same pressure, same slanted angle, almost like the pen had been clenched too tightly. Nadia scanned it into her computer and overlaid both documents on Photoshop. It's a match, she said finally, her voice thin. You were never paranoid. Someone inside wrote this. Micah just stared. He didn't say, "I knew it." He didn't say anything. The weight of the truth was heavier than the suspicion had been. But things moved fast after that. The next morning, Nadia got an anonymous email forwarded from a PTA member she barely knew. Subject: FYI, emergency meeting tonight. It was a calendar invite marked as confidential, non-public. No names, no agenda, just one line in the body. Emergency executive session, personnel and student conduct matters, 7:30 p.m., admin building. Attached was the signature of the superintendent. Nadia's blood ran cold. "They're doing this in secret," she muttered, eyes scanning the details again. Micah's mother looked up from the kitchen. "Doing what?" "Meeting. Tonight. About him. They didn't notify us. They weren't going to." His father stood by the fridge, silent for a long beat. Then, "So we show up. They won't let us in. Then we make them." But before they could finalize anything, there was a knock at the front door. Micah opened it.
Miss Calderon.
His 10th grade English teacher. Quiet. Brilliant. Half black, half Mexican. One of the only teachers who ever treated him like he belonged. She stood on the porch clutching a worn leather notebook and a flash drive. "I know about the meeting," she said, "and I can get you in." They parked behind a maintenance shed 2 blocks from the district administrative building. Micah wore all black, hoodie zipped up, the flash drive hidden in his sock. Ms. Calderon had gotten access through an old keycard, one she'd never returned after serving on the curriculum committee. They entered through a back entrance, past the boiler room, past dusty records rooms, until they reached a narrow storage closet, just 2 doors away from the boardroom. The wall was thin. Micah could hear them before they even pressed their ears to the door. The first voice was clipped, polished, someone from the legal side.
He's a liability.
"Every day he's in that building, we risk exposure. It's not just the school anymore. It's the district." Another voice. A woman. Older. Exasperated. "And that video, how was it leaked? The test photos? That recording in the classroom? These were internal-only files." Micah swallowed hard. They were talking about the evidence Nadia had posted. The very things keeping his story afloat. Then he heard it.
Mr. Houston.
"I never approved distribution of that exam," he said coldly. "It was stolen from my drawer. This breach is on whoever spread it." Micah's stomach twisted. It was worse than lying. It was calculated deflection. Micah could see it now. They were painting him as a disruptive hacker, someone who manipulated records and endangered school staff. It wasn't just about getting rid of him. It was about rewriting the story. Another board member mumbled something, muffled by the wall. Then the superintendent's voice cut through. "If this gets out, we're all done." Micah felt his knees buckle. Ms. Calderon reached into her bag and handed him a small device, a pen recorder. "I've been documenting things for months. Meetings, staff room conversations. You're not the first student they've tried to push out, but you're the first who didn't vanish quietly." Micah blinked. "Why me?" he whispered. She met his eyes. "Because you scared them. Because you didn't break." The voices inside shifted. Another man, deep-voiced, likely someone on the finance side, spoke next. "We should resolve this quietly. Offer him a transfer. Make it look like a scholarship opportunity. Frame it as us supporting his excellence." A pause. "And remove the teacher discreetly. Say it's a sabbatical, or early retirement. No blame. No lawsuits." Micah's face burned. They weren't just covering it up. They were strategizing a PR campaign. Micah wasn't going to be vindicated. He was going to be airbrushed, made invisible, like it never happened. He clenched his jaw. "They're going to spin it, paint it like they helped me." Miss Calderon nodded. "Unless we stop them." She handed him the flash drive. Inside this, staff emails, a paper trail of who altered your records, and who signed off on version D. Micah's heart pounded. Halston. It had to be. But then Calderon added, "It wasn't just him." He looked at her. "What?" She hesitated. "It was the principal. Valdez. She flagged your name weeks before the test. Claimed you were high risk for academic irregularities. That's how Halston justified giving you a modified version." Micah blinked. "They planned it?" "Yes. And now they're planning your exit." Micah took a step back from the door. His fingers clenched around the flash drive. Just as he turned toward the exit, another sentence drifted through the wall. "If we don't act now, we'll lose control of the narrative." Micah stopped cold. He whispered, "They're going to announce it tomorrow. A transfer. A statement. Miss Calderon nodded grimly. Unless you beat them to it. It started with a message that wasn't supposed to exist. Nadia was combing through emails late one evening, her inbox a chaotic flood of support, threats, media requests, and untraceable burner accounts, when she saw it. No subject line, no sender name, just a single cryptic sentence. Check the bottom drawer of room 214. Back left. Attached was a single blurry photo, taken low and slightly tilted. It showed the edge of a classroom desk with a scratched bronze handle and a green post-it stuck on it. Do not touch. Micah stared at it, his blood going cold. That's Halston's desk. The message had no follow-up. No context. No request for thanks or response. Just the coordinates to a truth that had been buried. They made a plan fast. No delays. No second guesses. Nadia would keep the car running while Micah went inside alone. Saturday afternoon. Campus would be empty. Miss Calderon confirmed Halston wasn't scheduled to be in the building. He never works weekends, she said. Micah wore black jeans, a black hoodie, and gloves, just in case. He waited until the maintenance team left, then slipped through a side entrance by the dumpsters. The hallway lights buzzed dimly above as he crept down the familiar corridor. He passed the chemistry lab, the counselor's office, the trophy case filled with plaques for kids who looked nothing like him. Then he pushed the door open slowly. The room felt sterile, lifeless. The desks were lined up in rows, like they were waiting for orders. The air carried a faint smell of disinfectant and printer ink. At the front of the room sat the fortress. Halston's desk.
Neat. Rigid. Impenetrable.
Micah walked around and knelt beside the drawer in the back left corner. The one from the photo. Locked. Of course. He jiggled the handle gently, but it didn't budge. Just then, a sound behind him made him freeze. Footsteps. He whipped around. A tall figure stood in the doorway. It wasn't Halston. It was Mr. Riggins, the school custodian. Mid-60s, weathered face. Always wore a navy ball cap, with faded letters across the front. Micah had seen him his whole life, but never heard him speak more than a sentence. Micah stood slowly. Mr. Riggins, I'm not here to... I know why you're here. His voice was calm, deep, steady. He stepped inside and shut the door behind him. I saw what they did to your test. Saw them whispering in the dark when they thought I wasn't listening. Micah blinked. Why didn't you say anything? Riggins exhaled. Because I didn't think anyone would ever fight back. But then you did. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a tiny brass key. You're not the first, he said. But you're the first who made noise loud enough to matter. Micah's hands trembled as he took the key. It slid in perfectly. Click. The drawer opened with a soft metallic groan. Inside was a stack of manila folders. Dozens, thick with paper. Each labeled with student names written in sharp, precise handwriting. Micah scanned them quickly. Darius, Jalen H., Marissa T., Kiera D., Micah T. Every name was black. Micah pulled out his own folder and opened it. 2 test versions sat inside. The first his actual graded exam, with his handwriting, his work, his answers. Every page had red marks, most of them unjustified. Several questions marked wrong were fully correct. Others had entire explanations crossed out for no reason. Micah flipped to the second version. Same test, easier questions, no annotations, no name. Same student, different outcome. Riggins murmured. Micah checked the others. Each folder followed the same pattern, a harder, more punishing version, marked up harshly, and a cleaner, simpler one unused. It wasn't just about you, Riggins said. This is how they weeded out the ones they didn't want succeeding. Micah's throat burned. His knees almost buckled. All those kids, his friends, classmates, some who had dropped out, some who had transferred, they never stood a chance. And nobody ever knew why. Until now. He pulled out his phone and began snapping photos. Every page, every name, every note. Then he reached into his hoodie pocket and took out the flash drive Miss Calderon had given him. He booted up Halston's school computer. No password. Micah began scanning and saving each file into a single folder labeled Version Disparity Evidence Do Not Delete. The process was slow. Each file dragged, scanned, saved, but steady. Outside, Mr. Riggins kept watch. Micah was mid-scan when the door creaked. He turned, thinking it was Riggins again. It wasn't. It was Principal Valdez. She stood in the doorway, eyes narrowed, arms folded. Micah froze. The drawer was still open. The folders splayed across the desk. The computer screen glowed behind him. She stepped inside slowly. "You really couldn't leave well enough alone, could you?" Micah said nothing. Valdez looked at the names, the copies, the folders. She wasn't surprised. She didn't deny it. Instead, she walked to the door and locked it. Then turned back around. "This is gonna cost you everything." Micah stared at her, refusing to flinch. But his fingers quietly pressed save all on the screen behind him. One more second. 1 second before everything changed. Ashgrove High had never seen anything like it. By Monday morning, the sidewalk in front of the school looked like the steps of a courthouse. News vans from all 3 local channels lined the curb. Camera crews were setting up tripods. Journalists were scribbling notes. Microphones were being shoved into students' faces as they walked through the school's front doors. Some kids smiled nervously, caught up in the spectacle. Others turned their heads and walked faster, pretending not to hear the questions. But everyone knew what was happening, and everyone knew who it was about. Micah Turner had become the name on every tongue. Inside the Turner household, the mood was tense. Micah stood at the window, arms folded. Nadia was on her laptop, replying to emails. Their parents sat on the couch behind them, watching the local news stream live. "They've got their statement ready," Nadia muttered, scrolling through social media. Micah didn't respond. He hadn't slept the night before. Every time he closed his eyes, he heard Valdez's voice again. "This is going to cost you everything." But he hadn't backed down. Not when they changed his test. Not when they suspended him. Not when they threatened his family. And he wasn't about to start now. At exactly 11 a.m., Principal Valdez stepped behind a podium in front of the district's main office building. She was flanked by 2 district lawyers, both white, both in matching gray suits. Behind them, a large banner read, "Ash Grove School District, committed to excellence and integrity." Valdez adjusted the microphone. "Thank you all for coming." Her tone was measured, every syllable practiced. "We understand that recent allegations circulating on social media have raised concerns within our community. We want to address these head-on." Micah watched her face on the screen. She looked calm, composed, but he'd seen what lay beneath. She continued, "First, let us state clearly, the Ash Grove School District takes any allegation of discrimination seriously. We have conducted an internal review of the claims brought forward involving advanced placement coursework and grading procedures." She paused. "And we have found no evidence to support the accusations." A murmur rippled through the reporters. Valdez held up a folder. "These are examples of outdated test materials and early drafts that were never administered. The alleged modified versions circulating online were falsified or misinterpreted." Nadia gasped. Micah's mother whispered, "She's calling it fake?" Valdez wasn't done. "We are aware of social media accounts spreading misinformation and doctored files. We urge our community to seek verified facts. Mr. Halston is a valued educator who has served this district with distinction for 17 years. We will not tolerate character assassination." Micah stood frozen. He wasn't shocked. He was angry. Deeply, steadily angry. Because he'd seen those tests. Because he'd scanned those folders. Because he knew every word out of her mouth was a lie. Back at the school, protests began before Valdez even finished speaking. Parents stood outside the building, some waving signs, others arguing with staff at the entrance. Students whispered in hallways. Group chats exploded with memes and rage. But something else was brewing. Something no one saw coming. At 1:24 p.m., a new tweet appeared on Twitter. Posted from a freshly created account, Ashgrove Leaks. The tweet was simple. "If they're going to lie, let's play the truth." Attached was a 38-second audio file. Micah saw it pop up in real time. At first, he didn't recognize the voices. The quality was muffled. Background sounds included the ding of a microwave, the hiss of a coffee machine, chairs scraping tile. Then came the voice. Male. Confident. Familiar. Halston. "He thinks just 'cause he's got good grades, he's owed something. He needs to learn his place."
Silence.
Then a female voice. Also familiar. "Careful. These phones are always listening." A chuckle. "Let them. I've been around too long to get caught." The audio ended. No names were mentioned. But it didn't matter. Ashgrove students recognized that voice. So did parents. So did faculty. Within 15 minutes, the tweet had over 20,000. By 3:00 p.m., it was trending in-state. At 3:45 p.m., the local news cut into its regular programming with an emergency update. New recording casts doubt on Ashgrove School District's official statement. Channel 9 News. The same outlet that had parroted the district's talking points just that morning, now aired the leaked clip in full. They showed Halston's yearbook photo next to the transcript. The caption underneath read, "Ashgrove teacher caught in racist remark." Micah stood frozen in the living room, staring at the TV. He didn't cheer. He didn't smile. He just felt tired. It had taken weeks to get here. Weeks of humiliation, of gaslighting, of being told to sit down, shut up, and be grateful. And now the truth was out. Halston had said what they all suspected, and someone had captured it. By 6:00 p.m., the district had deleted its press release. By 7:00 p.m., a new one appeared. "We are aware of a leaked recording involving Ashgrove personnel. An independent investigation will begin immediately. Until further notice, the staff member involved has been placed on administrative leave." Still no apology. Still no admission of guilt. But they were cracking. That night, Micah's phone buzzed with dozens of messages. From classmates, former students, reporters. But one message stood out. A text from an unknown number. "I have more. Meet me tomorrow. Back of the library. 4 p.m. No name. No follow-up. Just a single message that promised another secret. Micah showed it to Nadia. She narrowed her eyes. It could be a trap. Or a breakthrough. Micah didn't hesitate. "I'm going." The next day, 4
Back of the library.
A shadow waited beneath the branches of the old elm tree. Micah approached slowly, and what he saw changed everything. After the leaked audio clip of Mr. Halston hit the airwaves, everything went from chaotic to combustible. Micah's name was on every morning radio show. CNN ran a 2-minute segment summarizing the allegations. Justice for Micah trended on Twitter for 36 hours straight. Classmates Micah hadn't seen since middle school were reposting old selfies with him, like he was a martyr they'd known all along. But in the middle of the noise, something serious and quiet arrived. Opportunity. Her name was Tasha Reynolds. Micah hadn't heard of her before, but Nadia had. "She's the one who took down the Princeton County Board," Nadia said, wide-eyed, reading from her phone. $4 million settlement. 3 administrators fired. State-level reform. Reynolds had been a civil rights prosecutor at the DOJ before starting her own law firm in D.C. Her client list included cases against universities, corporations, even a few police departments. When she reached out through Nadia's encrypted inbox, Micah's family didn't hesitate to schedule a meeting. She flew in within 48 hours. She arrived without an entourage. No assistant, no briefcase, just a soft leather laptop sleeve and a rolled-up umbrella. She sat at the Turner's dining table, like she'd eaten there 100 times. Her presence was calm but firm, authority without arrogance. "I'm not here for headlines," she said, looking at each of them. "I'm here for impact, and if you let me, I'll take your case pro bono." Micah's mother raised an eyebrow. "Why?" "Because they messed with the wrong family at the wrong moment. And because this isn't just about Micah, it's about the systems that created someone like Halston." She unfolded a single page. "I want to file a federal civil rights lawsuit against the Ashgrove School District and Principal Valdez. Racial discrimination, hostile learning environment, retaliation, due process violations. You've got enough documentation to bury them." Reynolds didn't hold back. She outlined every step with cold clarity. Class action status if other students joined. Depositions of staff and school board members. Subpoenas for emails, lesson plans, disciplinary logs. Demands for damages, restitution, and enforced policy reform. She looked directly at Micah. "You will be the face of this. That comes with power, but also cost. You okay with that?" Micah nodded once. "Good," she said. "Because the country's watching now." That night, the family didn't sleep much. Not because of fear, but because of decision. Micah's dad paced the living room. This could change everything for better or worse. His mom stared out the window. "He's still a kid. What if they go further?" "They already went too far," Nadia said flatly. "They tried to ruin his life. You don't walk away from that." The silence that followed wasn't agreement. It was weight. This wasn't just about truth anymore. It was about survival. They agreed to move forward. Reynolds drafted the complaint and filed it by morning. Then she called a small press conference on the courthouse steps. "We refuse to be silent," she said into a sea of microphones. "This family will not be bullied into compliance. If justice costs comfort, so be it." Micah stood beside her. Head high, back straight, silent, unshaken. The crowd applauded.
The world noticed.
But not everyone was clapping. That night, a brick came through their window. It happened just after dinner. Micah had been rinsing plates when the sound of shattering glass exploded from the front room. They all dropped to the floor. His dad yelled for everyone to stay down. His mom clutched Nadia's arm. When Micah got up, he saw the brick lying amid shards of glass. Taped to it was a note, handwritten in large block letters, "You sue, you die." The police arrived quickly. 2 officers, both black, both visibly shaken by the note. They filed a report, dusted the brick for prints, and promised enhanced patrols. But they didn't promise safety. No one could. That night, Micah's mom moved a bat under her bed. His dad installed motion-activated floodlights. Nadia started sleeping with her phone clutched in her hand, flashlight app open. Micah didn't sleep at all. The threats escalated fast. Nadia's former college roommate received a voicemail from a distorted number. "Tell your activist friend to back down, or we'll come for you next." Micah's old coach at the YMCA found an envelope in his mailbox with Micah's face printed on a sheet of paper. Across the forehead, "Lie." Church members stopped waving after Sunday service. The cashier at the local grocery store began scanning items with her eyes down. It wasn't just about hate anymore. It was about fear, and it was working. Still, Reynolds refused to stop. She began assembling witness lists, collecting affidavits, and filing formal requests for internal district communications. She planned a class action announcement within 2 weeks, but the backlash didn't care about her timeline. It had its own. 3 days later, Micah's mom was driving home from a follow-up meeting with Reynolds. Micah and Nadia were in the back seat. Their dad was riding shotgun, reading through a draft statement for the news. They were on the freeway. Midway through a gentle curve, Micah's mom tapped the brakes. Nothing happened. She tapped again, harder. Still nothing. Her voice was barely above a whisper. Brakes out. The car kept moving. Micah looked up, saw the fear in her eyes. Nadia clutched the door handle. His dad stayed calm. Shift neutral. Now. She did. The car began slowing. But barely. A semi roared past them, horn blaring. Then another. Finally, after what felt like hours, they reached the shoulder. They rolled to a stop. The silence in the car was thicker than the air outside. Then his mom said something that made Micah's blood run cold. "I had them checked yesterday." Micah stepped out, knelt beside the front bumper, felt around the undercarriage. His fingers touched something sharp. The brake line, sliced clean. No corrosion, no wear, no fray, just a deliberate cut. He stood slowly, holding the severed cable in one hand. And for the first time since this all began, he felt something worse than anger. He felt hunted. It began with a message on a student group chat. No big organization. No outside activist group. Just 3 juniors from Ashgrove High who'd had enough. They designed a flyer in Canva. Bold white letters against a black background. "We demand truth. We demand change. Rally A Ashgrove High. Saturday. Peaceful. Student-led. Powerful." They posted it on Instagram, on Twitter, on Snapchat. By the end of the day, over 400 people had RSVP. Micah hadn't even known it was happening until Nadia showed him. He stared at her screen, a quiet ache forming behind his ribs. "They're doing this for you," she said softly. But Micah shook his head. "They're doing it for themselves. And they Micah didn't plan to speak. He didn't write a speech. He didn't rehearse anything. He was tired of being the symbol. Tired of speaking, while others ignored the actual pain. But when Saturday came, and he saw the crowd forming by 9:30 a.m., his hands began to sweat. Nadia saw him fidgeting, and said gently, "You don't have to lead this, but they need to hear you." He nodded, slowly. Even if he didn't want to speak, he couldn't stay silent. The school lawn had never looked like this. Hundreds of people packed shoulder to shoulder. Students from multiple schools, parents, Ashgrove alumni, former teachers, even retired janitors and librarians showed up in support. One man brought folding chairs and a cooler of water bottles, handing them out to elderly folks in the back. Signs waved in the air. "Black students matter. Education, not elimination." "Micah, we believe you." News crews were everywhere, Channel 9, Channel 5, even a camera from MSNBC. A group of elementary school kids sat in a circle on the grass, writing "Dream" on poster boards. It was more than a protest. It was a reckoning. Micah stood on the school's front steps, the same ones he'd walked up every morning just weeks ago. Head down, earbuds in, praying to be invisible.
Now he was anything but.
He scanned the crowd. There was Mrs. Hafford, his old 8th grade English teacher, with tears in her eyes and a sign that read, "Micah was always brilliant." There was Jaden, his former teammate from JV basketball, wearing a hoodie with Micah's name painted across the back. There were faces of every color, every background, chanting together. No justice, no peace, no racist policies. Micah stepped to the mic. He didn't prepare a speech, so he spoke from where the hurt lived. "I'm not here to be a hero," he began. "I'm here because I wanted to learn. I wanted to walk into school and be seen for my work, not my skin." The crowd quieted. Micah scanned their faces. He didn't see pity. He saw power. "I've been told I don't belong. I've been handed harder tests, been suspended for things I didn't start. I've watched my family get threatened for telling the truth. And still, we're here." Cheers. But this isn't just about me. It's about every kid who was silenced. Every student who got told to lower their hand. Every parent who never got a call back. More cheers. He ended with one line. "We're not asking for favors. We're demanding a future." The crowd erupted. Micah stepped back from the mic. He felt finally a small flicker of relief. But peace never lasted long in Ashgrove. At the far edge of the lawn, past the hedges that separated school property from public sidewalk, a second group had gathered. Smaller, louder, different. About 25 people. Mostly older, mostly white. They held signs too. "Ashgrove stands with Halston. No to mob rule. Don't cancel excellence." One man wore mirrored sunglasses and an old army jacket. Another had a megaphone and shouted phrases like "reverse racism is still racism." Reynolds walked over to the police officers posted nearby. "Are they allowed to be here?" "They're on public sidewalk. We've got it under control," one officer replied. Micah tried not to look, tried to stay focused on the faces of support. But he could feel it. The simmering hate. Like coals burning at the edge of something beautiful. Then someone threw a water bottle. It hit the podium and exploded, drenching the mic and startling the nearby speakers. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Police moved forward. Before they could contain it, another bottle came. This one hitting a student holding a sign that read, "Dismantle discrimination." Screams. A small scuffle broke out near the barricade. Adults rushed to pull kids back. Protesters and counter-protesters shouted over each other. Micah stood frozen, his heart thudding in his chest. Then Nadia grabbed his arm. "Micah," she whispered urgently. "Look, over there." She pointed beyond the crowd, toward the far end of the counter-protest. Micah squinted. One man standing still while others moved. Sunglasses, baseball cap, faded polo shirt, crooked posture. Micah felt the air leave his lungs. He didn't finish. He knew the frame. The slouch. The sharp jaw. It was Halston. The man didn't speak, didn't wave a sign, just stood there, half shaded by a tree, watching. Micah took a step toward him, then another. But before he could call out, Halston slipped behind the crowd and disappeared into the line of parked cars. Gone. Micah turned back toward the stage. His hands clenched, because now he knew Halston hadn't disappeared. He was watching, and he wasn't finished. The courtroom felt colder than it should have. Micah sat upright in his navy blazer, shoulders squared, jaw tight. On his right sat Tasha Reynolds, unshaken, her posture as precise as her legal strategy. To his left, the federal flag fluttered slightly in the soft hum of the air conditioning, as if whispering, "Don't expect warmth in here." It had taken 7 months to get here. 7 months of being doubted, of seeing his family live in fear, of holding his breath every time a car slowed in front of their house. 7 months of staying strong, not because he wanted to, but because there was no other choice. This courtroom, with its gleaming wood panels and high ceilings, was supposed to be the place where truth mattered. But as soon as the jury filed in, Micah's stomach dropped. 12 people, 9 white, 2 black, 1 Hispanic. The black woman looked alert, skeptical in the way that meant she'd been here before, in systems that smiled politely while working against her. The black man wore a suit jacket a size too big and eyes that never quite met Micah's. And then there was the older white man in the front row. Gray eyebrows, red tie, crossed arms, a face that hadn't cracked a smile all morning. Micah already knew what side he was on. Reynolds stood for the opening statement. She didn't pace. She didn't perform. She spoke like she was testifying, not just to the jury, but to the nation watching through courtroom sketches and live-stream transcripts. This is not about a single test, she began. This is about a culture, a structure, that allowed one educator to weaponize his power against a student for no reason other than his race. She gestured gently toward Micah. My client was academically exceptional, disciplined, never in trouble until he challenged the silence. And when he did, the punishment began. She stepped forward slightly. You will see proof of altered assignments, discriminatory discipline, and you will hear with your own ears a recording of the defendant stating that my client needed to learn his place. This is not theoretical. This is real harm, inflicted with deliberate intent. She paused, because when institutions feel they can silence black voices without consequence, they do. Then came the defense. Halston's lawyer was everything you'd expect from a man used to spinning ugly into acceptable. Trim suit. Over-rehearsed smile. The kind of tone designed to sound reasonable. He began with a chuckle. This is a case of miscommunication, he said. A misunderstanding. He turned to the jury, his hands open like a pastor giving communion. Yes, mistakes may have happened. But was there malicious intent? Was there racism? Or was this a bright young man, driven and ambitious, who misread the situation? Micah blinked slowly. He wasn't even being portrayed as a liar, just a sensitive kid who misunderstood. The lawyer added, Mr. Halston has served this district with integrity for nearly 2 decades. He's mentored countless students of all backgrounds. Then he let the silence do its work. Let's not crucify a man for one sentence taken out of context, spoken in private. The first day of testimony belonged to the Turners. Micah's father described the panic attacks. His mother described the window shattered by a brick. The death threats. The vandalism. The time the brakes failed and nearly killed them. Nadia delivered her part with surgical precision. She recounted the social media campaign, the anonymous threats, and the moment she found the rigged test papers in a locked drawer. We never wanted this, she said. But once the lies started, we couldn't pretend anymore. Then came the custodian, Mr. Bain, quiet, anxious, but credible. He told the courtroom how he found a second set of test papers, identical layouts, identical dates, but with questions drastically harder for specific students. All black, and he hadn't known what to do, so he kept them. I thought, maybe I was wrong, he said, wringing his cap in his hands. But then I saw the names, and I knew I wasn't. The next morning, Reynolds played the audio, the now infamous lounge recording. He thinks just because he's got good grades, he's owed something. He needs to learn his place. It echoed in the silent courtroom. Several jurors shifted in their seats. One scribbled something furiously. The black woman on the jury closed her eyes just for a second. And the white man in the red tie, he nodded.
Not in shock.
In understanding. As if Halston had said something reasonable. Micah felt the floor drop beneath him. Then it was Halston's turn. He took the stand with rehearsed humility. Spoke in soft tones. Dressed like a victim. I've always pushed my students, he said. Especially the bright ones. I saw potential in Micah, and I challenged him. He leaned forward slightly. Did I make mistakes? Maybe, but they weren't racist. He paused. I've taught dozens of black students. I even wrote a recommendation letter for one to MIT. He smiled softly, as if that was proof of innocence. Reynolds rose for cross-examination. Her voice stayed calm, but her questions cut like razors. You say you gave him harder questions to challenge him. Were his grades suffering? No. Any disciplinary issues before? No. Then why did you write in your email to the principal that he was cocky and needed to be put in his place? Silence. Halston fidgeted. I was frustrated. He was questioning everything. Reynolds stepped closer. Isn't that what we want students to do in advanced classes? He didn't answer. She pressed on. Were any white students given tests with different questions? No. So only Micah and 2 other black students received altered exams? Yes. Would you call that equitable treatment? He didn't respond. Reynolds turned to the jury. No further questions. As court adjourned for the day, Micah stood, muscles sore from sitting still for hours. As the jurors filed out, he glanced at them. Several avoided eye contact. But the older white man in the front row, he looked directly at Micah and winked. Micah froze. His breath caught. Because that wink said everything. without saying a word. This wasn't going to be about facts. It was going to be about belief. And someone in that jury had already made up their mind. The courtroom was suffocating. Micah sat between Tasha Reynolds and Nadia, back straight, eyes forward, trying to breathe through the storm inside his chest. His palms were sweating, but his face remained unreadable, locked in a calm he didn't feel. They'd waited nearly 2 hours. 2 hours for the jury to decide if everything, the racism, the sabotage, the threats, would matter. Reynolds leaned slightly and whispered, "If it's that quick, it means they've already made up their minds." Micah nodded once, but inside something broke. The foreman stepped into the room, middle-aged, salt and pepper hair, carrying a sealed envelope with the weight of something final. The judge motioned for quiet. "Has the jury reached a verdict?" "We have, Your Honor." The envelope was handed over. Micah gripped the edge of his seat. The judge unfolded the paper, read silently, then lifted his eyes. In the matter of Micah Turner versus Ashgrove Unified School District and Halston Thomas, a pause. Micah felt his heartbeat in his throat. "We find the defendants not guilty on all counts." It was like air left the room. There was no cheer, no gasp loud enough to match the weight of what had just been said. Just silence. Cold. Final. Crippling.
Reynolds closed her eyes.
Nadia covered her mouth with her hand. Micah, he didn't blink. He just turned, slowly, to look at the jury. Right at the man in the red tie. The same man who had nodded when Halston said, "He needs to learn his place." The same man who was now smiling. Reynolds leaned toward Micah. "We'll appeal. We can go federal. This doesn't end here." But Micah didn't respond. He was too busy watching Halston. The teacher rose, shook hands with his lawyer, patted the bailiff on the shoulder like they were old friends. Micah could feel the heat rising in his chest. But it wasn't rage. It was clarity. They hadn't just dismissed his case. They'd declared that none of it had mattered. The judge banged the gavel softly, murmured, "Court is adjourned," and stood. Micah rose too, slow and quiet, as if any sudden movement might make the pain burst out loud. Nadia touched his arm gently. "We'll fight," she whispered. "We always do." He nodded once. But just as he turned to leave, a voice cut through the silence. High, clear, nervous. "There's something else you need to see." The entire courtroom froze. The judge looked up from gathering his papers. "Who said that?" A girl stood in the back row. Micah recognized her junior year, shy, always wore hoodies with indie band logos. He didn't know her name, but they'd shared a study hall once. She held up a small silver flash drive. Her hands were shaking. I have a video," she said. "From room 214. The day before the midterms." Whispers rippled across the room. Room 2. Micah's heart kicked into overdrive. That was Halston's room, where the rigged test was handed out, where everything started. Reynolds turned sharply. "Your Honor, may we approach?" The judge motioned both legal teams to the bench. Micah couldn't hear what was being said, but Halston's lawyer was already shaking his head. "She's not on the witness list," he was saying. "This is inadmissible." The girl whose name, they now learned, was Kaylee Rivas, stepped forward nervously, still holding the flash drive like it might explode in her palm. "I didn't come forward before," she said, "because I was scared. But I saved something. I wasn't trying to spy. She hesitated. "I recorded the projector feed on my phone. I was trying to study for the test later. I forgot it was recording." Micah's legs nearly gave out. The judge finally spoke.
"Ms. Rivas."
"Do you swear this recording was not tampered with?"
I do.
"You're willing to hand it over?" She nodded. "I'll allow a recess," the judge said. "Both sides will review the footage. If it is what she claims, we will reconvene." Gasps. Halston's face turned the color of concrete. Reynolds was already opening her laptop. Kaylee stepped forward and handed over the drive. Micah didn't move. His hands were locked on the bench in front of him. He didn't dare hope. Not yet. But as Reynolds plugged in the flash drive, Micah leaned closer. Because if what she said was true, the truth wasn't just coming back. It was about to scream. The courtroom buzzed with hushed frenzy. Cameras had just flashed from the gallery as the student Kaylee handed over her flash drive. The judge adjourned for recess, allowing attorneys to review the mysterious file. Micah stood by the bench, flanked by Tasha Reynolds, his lawyer, and Nadia. Their hearts pounded in unison, replying to the same question. Would this finally shift the balance? Micah watched as Reynolds slid the USB into her laptop. The file names popped up quickly. Security Cam Room 24-2, UO50825.mp4. She clicked play. The screen projected onto the monitor. The image was grainy, fuzzy, like a security cam feed, left in a drawer far too long, but unmistakable. A live recording of room 2014, lit by the ceiling's cold fluorescent glow. Micah knew where this was going before it started. The angle revealed the entire teacher's desk and parts of the student rows. A figure entered. Halston, his posture familiar even in blur. He whispered something to the camera, tapped a button, and the screen inside the room flickered. Then, painstakingly, he pulled out packets, compared them and swapped pages between tests. One labeled C was swapped for another, easier version tucked inside the folder, meant for Micah. Micah's own folder. The rigged version. And that wasn't all. Halston smirked, looked over at the camera location. With a cold laugh he leaned in, lips curled. Let's see how they squirm now. He didn't know he himself was being recorded on a backup feed, one that Kaylee captured unwittingly. Reynolds stood up straight, pulse racing. Your Honor, may we admit this as evidence? She asked with restraint, the words nearly choking in her throat. The judge returned, brows raised. This is damning, he said, eyes widening. Defense? Objections? Halston's lawyer pushed his glasses up. This footage was deleted from the official servers, and reintroduced harmless tampering could have happened. But Reynolds leaned forward. Exactly why we need a full forensics audit on the file. We can prove it's authentic, metadata intact, audio waveforms untouched. Across the aisle, Halston's complexion looked uncertain for the first time. The judge ruled the footage admissible, once properly authenticated. He ordered a brief recess so the tech team could verify date stamps, digital signatures, and chain of custody. The courtroom stood. Outside, whispers broke out. Micah's classmates' peers leaned forward, some mouths agape. Teachers shifted uncomfortably. Even the jurors, equally divided yesterday, were now unsettled. On the jury bench, the older man with the red tie took off his glasses. Blinked slow. Had that wink been presumption? The forensic team returned. Their confirmation came swiftly. No alteration detected. Tamper-proof hash remains consistent with original footage date. May. The judge nodded. Video is admitted. Jury will be recalled. The spectators exhaled collectively. Inside, adrenaline surged. Micah's hands trembled. This was the smoking gun. The undoing. He looked up and saw the defense with clenched jaws. Disbelief etched across their faces. But the retribution wasn't over. As court reconvened, Tasha Reynolds approached the jury with purpose. She stood quietly, then pressed play again on the center monitor. Halston's actions, sneaking test versions, mocking students, deliberately hiding truth and evidence, played unfettered before 12 peers entrusted to judge. It was beyond denial now. The cooling lights of room 2014 flickered back on in the video every few seconds, punctuating every act of betrayal. The vibe in the room shifted. Tension turned to gravity. Once the footage finished, Reynolds spoke with controlled clarity. Ladies and gentlemen, you've just heard a man confessing with action, not words, that he manipulated test conditions and maliciously targeted my client. He hid it, knowing no one would watch. That betrayal shook Micah's life. This isn't about academic rigor. It's a violation of trust, a pattern of misconduct, and it's undeniably charged with racism. Micah's throat tightened. The jury, many of whom had been as cold-eyed as the older white man, now shifted uncomfortably. Even he swallowed hard, eyes now serious. Halston's lawyer rose again. Though disturbing, this incident occurred before the lawsuit was ever filed. It could be misconduct. But was it criminal, or was it poor judgment? Reynolds launched. It's exactly what this case is, the cruel intelligence of his plan. And now, with that footage, the country sees it. She turned to the judge. We request a mistrial, or if not, sentencing relief. The judge sat quietly. His gaze traveled to Micah. The weight in the air was palpable. That evening, Tasha Reynolds drafted a press release, this time shifting gears. With federal backing, they'd not only reopened the case, but elevated it. Micah watched the draft on screen. New security footage reveals premeditated test tampering and racist hostility. We are demanding federal oversight and full accountability. He exhaled. Because the truth wasn't just returned to trial. It was now unstoppable. And justice, once far away, was finally coming into focus. It was 1 year to the day since everything started with a crooked grin, and a test he wasn't supposed to receive. Micah stood in front of room 214, AP Chemistry, breathing in the scent of chalk dust and recycled air. The door was wide open, but today it wasn't a trap. Instead, it was an invitation. The old chemistry lab looked the same. Periodic table posters had faded a shade. The smell of ethanol lingered faintly. Micah paused just inside the doorway as a small crowd gathered. Students, parents, teachers, and media. A banner above the chalkboard read, Micah Turner Scholarship, Injustice to Inspiration. He stepped carefully, memory jolting back to long hours of studying here, to the cold disdain he'd once felt under Halston's glare. That version of himself, an anxious, silenced kid, would have peeked inside and run out. This version took a deep breath and walked in fully. Tasha Reynolds stood at a podium in the front row, stiff but smiling, alongside Nadia and Micah's parents. The school superintendent was there too, ringed by the current AP Chemistry teacher, Ms. Liu, looking proud. A large plaque beside the podium featured Micah's face above the words, presented annually to a student who overcomes injustice with perseverance and courage. Micah's chest tightened. They weren't erasing the past. They were honoring what he made of it. Nadia stepped forward to speak first. I wanted my brother to know that this wasn't just about vindication, she said, voice bright. It was about transformation, about reclaiming space. Students clapped, cheering. Micah swallowed, unsteady, then took the mic. He spoke quietly, but the words landed hard. 1 year ago, I walked into this room believing I didn't belong, he said, looking around. I felt my intelligence was a threat, my desire to learn, a problem. He paused, letting the weight of memories settle in the air. But today, this room belongs to all of us. Not because of me, but because of what veracity demands. Reynolds fought back tears. Miss Liu nodded, blinking furiously. Micah continued, this scholarship isn't about me. It's about every student who gets knocked down by structural bias. It's about telling them, you belong, and you will be seen. After speeches, they unveiled the plaque. Cameras flashed. Students cheered. It was victory of sorts. Then someone pointed to the front row. Micah followed their gaze and froze. There, seated quietly in the crowd, was Halston. Not behind protest signs, not shouting denial, but sitting in plain clothes, expression unreadable, eyes fixed on Micah. It was unexpected, startling, unsettling. Why would he be here in this moment, this culmination of everything he tried to erase? The announcement ended, and people began to disperse for the reception. Micah excused himself. He walked toward the edge of the assembly area, pulling his phone out. He sent a quick message to Reynolds. I see him. What now? Her reply came before Micah processed the courage to move toward the man he never wanted to face again. Trust yourself. He swallowed hard. He stepped forward. Halston's posture didn't change. He didn't look away. Finally, Micah approached. Mr. Thomas, he said quietly. Halston looked up. His face softened, not with apology, but resignation. Micah, he said. His voice was low, laced with memory. This is powerful. Micah stayed silent. Then Halston, more honest than anyone had ever heard him, said, you deserved this. I'm sorry. The words hung in the air. Not enough, but something. Micah nodded. I'll make sure this scholarship actually helps students, really helps, he said. Halston nodded, stepping back, and letting someone else approach. Micah turned toward the audience as applause started again. He looked to the front row and saw someone unexpected. Someone he thought was gone. Someone who hadn't come to celebrate. The old custodian, Mr. Riggins, was standing among the school faculty, watching, with a quiet, knowing smile, because the story had come full circle, and some witnesses carried the power to change everything. If you've ever been overlooked, silenced, or judged for something you can't change, you know Micah's pain. Stories like his aren't just fiction. They happen every day, in classrooms, boardrooms, and streets. Type yes if you believe every voice deserves to be heard. Subscribe if this story broke your heart, but lit a fire in you.